Hey guys, First Regardsman here, and so I'll be talking about every single class in Space Marine 2 Patch 13 and tier listing them. And now, some of these classes are a bit better since my last tier list in Patch 12 for all of them, mainly the Tech Marine. And for the most part, I want to say before we even get into this, that every class in this game is in a pretty strong spot. Some of them are just a bit stronger than others, and we'll be going through all of them here one by one today, starting off with the Heavy class. Now, Heavy is a little bit strange. He used to be like a guaranteed S tier class, but these days he has fallen off a bit. I don't think he's as strong as he used to be because like he's predominantly just a damage dealer with a ton of HP, which is really strong in Space Marine 2. Like, don't get me wrong. Having equipment regen, having a fat pile of HP, that is good for most players in the game. When you're pushing like the absolute hardest content, I don't think I could like possibly put him at like the tippity top anymore, but he's still pretty strong. I still rank him pretty highly. Things like the heroic heavy bolter on him, things like heavy plasma and the new heroic heavy plasma pistol, excuse me, are very strong options for this class to do a ton of damage still. And damage in a lot of cases is really important in this game, and because of that, when you're playing with like a tactical, having a heavy to just dump damage on an Auspex scan is super strong. And for that reason, I'd still probably put him up in like the A, maybe B. I know some people rate this guy a little bit lower, but I would say he's still really strong, and whenever I play with him in like a solo or a hard strat, he does perform pretty well. It's just that compared to some of the other classes now, he's a little bit below them in utility, and because of that, I do put him here. But when it comes to like range damage and stuff like that, he is at the near top. Now, for the next class we have here, we have the Sniper. Now, Sniper is a little bit underrated in my opinion. The Sniper class is quite powerful in this game. When it comes to hard strats and operations, there really is nothing this class seriously struggles with anymore. Like, he kind of just blows through all content in the game for like operations and hard strats. We are not talking about the siege mode for the most part in this list, probably do a separate one for that. But as far as like hard strats are concerned, this guy has access to tremendous single target damage, a ton of equipment regen, a ton of damage reduction, and really when you take perk effects like Purification to get back all of your contested health on this guy off of like a single button press and also go invulnerable for 2 seconds, it is really difficult to actually die on the Sniper class. Like, I find my true solos on this guy have like a near 100% win rate because of that, because Purification and some of his other perk effects are just that strong, and all of his primary weapons like the Last Fusel, Heroic Instigator Carbine, Bolt Carbine, they are all amazing picks for him, and he has a ton of build diversity because of that. So I would probably put him in a top A. I think he's very strong, to be honest. Like, this guy is nearing the S tier in my opinion, but there are a couple classes I think are a bit stronger than him currently. Number one with the Tech Marine. Now, Tech Marine, when he came out, this guy was in a pretty weak state compared to now. He wasn't bad. Like, let's be very clear. The Tech Marine was not a bad class back in patch 12. It's just that he didn't have his team perk now with Battlefield Repairs that gives you double armor on Extremis or Majoris Execute. And because of that, he was definitely lacking in the armor regen. Some of his other perk effects, like No Knockback, had no lingering duration. But these days, the Tech Marine is in a really strong spot. This guy can put down a ridiculous amount of AoE damage in Space Marine 2. His ability to just like pump out range damage while also just blowing apart hordes with an Omniscient Axe is incredible. Now, in the siege mode, you are kind of like permanently stuck using the Argent Edge on this guy at a certain point because he just takes too much damage otherwise, but he has a ton of build diversity. And I have to say, as far as like, you know, class fun goes, I think the Tech Marine is like my most favorite class in the entire game currently. This guy is super fun to play. He has a ton going on with him. Whenever I make like a build guide for this guy, it always takes like 15 minutes because there is so much going on with this class. Like, you have so many different build options. His perks work so well together. There's only like a couple dead perks on this class. He is pretty damn well made. All of his primaries feel pretty good these days, and things like the Argent Edge, things like the Omniscient Axe, his turrets and all that, they all come together to make this guy very strong. Now, where he is weak is that you have the lowest HP total in the game tied with tactical, or excuse me, the Sniper class, but unlike the Sniper class, you do not have HP damage reduction, so he is very reliant on that you know, armor regen he has. But if you do get knocked over, his knockdown time is a bit longer, so you might just get blown up. But that being said, the Tech Marine, he is very strong. The turret puts out a ton of damage, he puts out a ton of damage, and when you're not playing by yourself, he is an amazing support damage dealer, and I kind of have to put him at now like the top of A now, or maybe even the S tier. Like, he's pretty close. You know, I'm gonna say it, I think Tech Marine is S tier these days. I think he might not be like the strongest S tier class in the entire game, but he is definitely like in that bracket. I think he is above these two classes currently for a team comp, not in solo. because in solo the Tech Marine's kit just like doesn't lend itself very well for him to like survive certain situations, because he does have a habit of getting stun locked and murdered as opposed to these guys. But like when it comes to a proper team comp with competent players, he is incredible, and for that reason I'll put him here in the S, because he very much pairs well with things like Bulwark, things like Tactical. And when you have a Tactical that Auspex scans properly, and you also get your Decapitating Stratagem or Precision Enhancement off, you will just like one-shot bosses sometimes. So Tech Marine, he goes into the S now. I know I put him like the bottom last time, but these days, some of his changes and just his class synergy, very powerful. And also you have his turrets in the siege mode now, so he's nice for that too. Next class here is also S tier, which is the Assault class. Now, Assault has a very tragic history in Space Marine 2. For a very long time, this guy was like utterly suffering in this game. He had like the worst perk tree options, and half his shit didn't work. His damage was abysmal. Melee in general in the game was abysmal. He had no invincibility frames upon landing, and half his prestige perks sucked. So these days, though, he's godly. Okay, this guy just mops up both factions in true solo and hard strats and operations, and he's also very strong in siege mode still. This guy is just him. He has multiple good build setups. He has incredible damage on the melee with things like the Power Fist, Xenophase Blade even, and his Power Axe. And on top of that, you have a ridiculous amount of mobility and free damage on things like a Carnifex. So you can pretty much trivialize entire boss encounters with Wings of Flame. He is very powerful right now. I would say he is currently above the Tech Marine in terms of like operations and hard strats. You know, Tech Marine might be above him in the siege mode now thanks to those turrets, but we'll talk about that later day. For now, I think Assault is still overall stronger than Tech Marine, and he's one of the strongest classes in the entire game, if not the strongest class in the entire game, because his horde clear is top tier, his boss damage is top tier, his mobility is top tier, and mobility in Space Marine 2 with iframes, with range damage reduction like you get on Hammer of Wrath for his prestige perks, that makes him a very potent force on both factions in the game, and because of that, I would put him up here in the S tier. Next class is fucking him. This is Bulwark. Bulwark is that guy. Bulwark is currently bugged while I'm making this list to have no cooldown on his Defensive Mastery signature perk, which means he can just one-shot parry every enemy in the game pretty much, but that's not part of his, like, you know, mandatory kit, I should say, so we're not really going to count that. But either way, this class has everything, okay? There is not a top tier team comp in all of Space Marine 2 that does not have the Bulwark class, because he just does everything. He has damage, he has damage reduction, he has damage reduction for your teammates, he has healing for your teammates and himself, and he also has a tremendous amount of stagger. His banner ability is incredible for setting up damage opportunities for yourself and your teammates, because really, when it comes to the Bulwark, you put down your banner in a boss fight and you tank the boss fight for your teammates, you're doing free damage on your parries with perks like Intimidating Aura, and you are also allowing them to get off their full damage potential because of that, because armor regen in Space Marine 2 is so damn strong, and he does that so well for you and himself that he is just an S tier class. And also he has animation canceling just like the Assault does in his jump pack now, but his is just like also tied to a 100% range damage reduction shield. Did I even mention that? This guy can perma stagger certain bosses. He's just him. Like, Bulwark is just that guy. I think Bulwark will probably be a top tier class in Space Marine 2 all the way until like the end of its life cycle, because he's just that good. I mean, his class kit is just fundamentally kind of cracked. Unless they remove things like animation canceling from him, or like lower down his like shield to not block 100% of range fire, which I don't think they'll ever do, he's just going to be up here forever. So because of that, Bulwark, S tier class, Cordis is him, for sure up here. Now, next class here is Vanguard. Now, Vanguard changes are coming. These are confirmed. Saber said they are going to change the Vanguard class. They're going to buff him. At the very least, they're going to buff his grapnel targeting. And at the moment, this class is mainly a support class. I know a lot of people think the Vanguard is like a super strong carry. He's really not a carry. What he does is he enables other classes to like reach their full potential. So the Vanguard's healing perk, his inner fire perk for CDR, he is a very strong and competent team member. The place that he lacks is just damage, and his damage just kind of sucks in comparison to like every other class in this game. And because of that, he is lower on the list, because like I mentioned at the beginning with Heavy, damage damage is one of the most important things in Space Marine 2, because if you are able to nuke down a boss, if you're able to remove a threat instantaneously, you're gonna have a significantly easier time against the boss fights themselves or the extremis encounters, and damage nuking is just super potent in like most games, and especially this one. So because of that, I do think the Vanguard is a little lacking there, but if he's, you know, in a proper team comp, he is still totally viable. This guy will do everything you need him to do in like operations, hard strats, and even siege. You can play him in whatever content you want. When I put him over here in the B tier, I'm not saying he is bad. I'm saying that he is just not quite on the level of the other classes currently, and his best perk combo is an execution combo for Zone of Impact and Tactical Prowess, and unfortunately that combo does like to bug out because his grapple targeting just sucks sometimes, and sometimes that grapple targeting will get him killed, and that's just kind of a silly thing in the game, but that will be fixed one day. I hope to one day see the Vanguard just like ascend up into the S tier where he really should be. He was kind of here at one point in the beginning of the game, but like since then he has been power crept, so I put him down here. He's still pretty strong. He's a great support class. He will still do a lot for your team and yourself. He has a lot of damage reduction and armor regen. It's just that when it comes to the class comparisons, he's not quite on the level of the other classes currently, in my opinion. Final class here is the Tactical class. Now, the Tactical is an interesting class in Space Marine 2. He has ridiculous damage potential. His Auspex scan can go up to like a 300% damage buff for your entire team. He has some of the best ranged weapons in the entire game, like the Pirate Blaster, the Grenade Launcher, Stalker Bolt Rifle, the newly buffed Plasma Incinerator. His perk tree is just littered with god tier perks. This guy has 60-second melt-a-bomb cooldowns for your entire team in siege mode. He's just kind of him. Like, the only thing holding this guy back is that he is squishy, but you know, that's his intended loop. He is a support class. He is a damage enabler and a damage range support, and he does that perfectly. He sets up your teammates to absolutely shit on every encounter in this game. He is part of every god tier team comp pretty much, because the Auspex scan damage nuking is just so damn powerful in this game. At the Tactical, yeah, he's up here. Like, I might put him a little bit under Assault because I think on his own he might perform a little bit worse, but he is definitely firmly in the S tier. I might even put him above the Tech Marine because the Auspex scan is just that strong, and Secure Stockpile as an equipment regen perk is that strong, and Tactical is absolutely deserving of the S tier. And that is pretty much everything for the patch 13 tier list. Now, none of these classes are bad, like I said before. Some of them are just a little weaker than others. I'd say the classes that really need a buff here are like Heavy and Vanguard, and thankfully Saber has said in their patch notes and community updates that they do intend to rework the perk tree on the Heavy a little bit and also give Vanguard some buffs. So they are aware that these two classes are lacking in diversity a little bit at the moment, but the other classes here, like the Sniper, Tech Marine, Tactical, Assault, and Bulwark, I think they are all in a amazing spot, and hopefully this get even better as we get more build variety for them, new heroic weapons, and hopefully new perks, and maybe even like a new perk tree extension one day. But that is pretty much all I have to say in this one, guys. Hopefully this was a good explanation of why I think these classes deserve to be in these different lists. You guys can let me know how you guys rank the classes. I know people have some big opinions on this, but let me know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching. And if you like content like this, subscribe for more. If you want to watch me live to ask me questions about the game or just come hang out, you can find me here on YouTube or on Twitch with the link in the video description. I'll also have a link to my community Discord. And as always, thanks for watching. Take it easy. Bye. Hey guys, first Regardsman here, and I'll be talking about every single melee weapon in Space Marine 2 patch 13, including the heroic ones. Now, we'll be ranking these all in a tier list here, and a lot of people have asked me to compare like the main relic tier options with the heroic variants. So today we're going to try that a bit instead, starting off with the Power Axe. Now, the Power Axe got added back in patch 10. This thing has received multiple buffs since then. The block variant got access to the Power Backstep and Power Wave, and also recently in patch 13, they finally fixed the Power Wave to hit the proper amount of enemies, and this weapon was already like a top tier option in the game, but the improved Power Wave hitting multiple enemies is very strong now. We also got a brand new heroic item we'll talk about in a second here with the Encarmine Axe. But as far as this one is concerned, the Power Axe, I think this one goes into S tier. The only thing this is bad at is like contested health recovery, as opposed to like a Chainsword or maybe even like a Thunder Hammer for like direct Nova damage. But for the most part, the Power Axe stagger on the Power Backstep is incredible. This weapon firmly belongs in the S tier in my opinion, and there's really only like 2 weapons in the entire game that I put over this one currently, and like that's including heroics, so a really strong option. Next weapon here is the Thunder Hammer. Now, The Thunderhammer has had a troubled history. This is a weapon that is famous in Warhammer 40k, and for the longest time, this one kind of sucked in damage, but we got a few buffs to this one, the biggest one being back in like patch 10, where they increased the area of effect radius on this thing to basically just be a 50% bonus and have a much easier time hitting things like Enlightened Zangors and Chaos Spawn, and just like obliterating hordes in general. The Thunderhammer these days is very strong. I actually think this weapon is one of the best options in the entire game for Chaos, especially because those wide area of effect ground slams and things like Aftershock, they will slam apart the Enlightened Zangors very easily. They have a very easy time at clearing out some of the more obnoxious enemies to hit, and for that reason I think this one goes firmly in the top of A. You know, you could definitely put this in S tier if you wanted to. I don't know if I'd say it's quite there even with like the balance and block version, but that being said, Thunderhammer is very strong. If you want to put an S, I can't disagree with you, but for me, I just put like the top of A. The next weapon here is the Chainsword. Now, the Chainsword is, in my opinion, like tied for the worst melee weapon of the relic tier options in the game currently. It is not bad, okay? Let's be very clear. The Chainsword is not bad in Space Marine 2. This weapon definitely functions, especially on classes like Vanguard, where you can take full advantage of perks like Swift Recovery for double CHP regen on your heavy attacks. And if you're unaware what CHP regen means, we're talking about contested health recovery, because this weapon has a perk that gives you double contested health recovery on every heavy attack, and because of that, if you're playing a class like Vanguard with a 50% bonus in base with their starting perk, it's very easy to just clear out Minotaur's hordes with that. And also, the block Chainsword has a very easy time just like one comboing guys off of a combo skip. But that being said, the other melee weapons like the Power Fist, Power Axe, Thunderhammer, all these are far better than the Chainsword is these days, and the utility of the Chainsword has kind of been lost over time. So I would probably say this one goes down to like maybe B or C tier. I do think there's one other melee weapon. I know I said it was tied, but like there's one I might actually put below this. So I'd say Chainsword goes into B. It's not bad. Like there was a really good Chainsword option, but those are related to the heroic tier. But as far as the relic tier options are concerned, the Chainsword goes into B for me. Maybe you disagree, but that's where I'm putting this one. Next one here is the Power Sword. Now, the Power Sword is another weapon in Space Marine 2 that's had a bit of a troubled history. This weapon had terrible damage on launch. The fencing variant was pretty much the only good one, and that was only because you could play it on Bulwark and just parry spam over and over for like gun strikes on Assault or the Bulwark class with Intimidating Aura, and because of that, it really wasn't a functional weapon that much on its own. But these days, it has received multiple buffs. The balance buff upped the damage tremendously on the balance relic tier options. The block Power Sword is very strong now for things like Power Whirl, and in patch 13 they buffed up the attack speed of all of these variants, including the heroic one we'll get into shortly, and I would say the Power Sword firmly goes into A now. I think this weapon is actually better than the Chainsword, and where this one seriously struggles is like the CHP regen, but that doesn't matter too much because the classes that use the Power Sword don't really care that much about that anyways, because they are just kind of monstrous with this weapon, because the Bulwark is top tier anyways, and the Assault class, he is super mobile, can take full advantage of things like Power Rake, and one of the strongest options on this weapon in general is the ability to not only have like massive horde clear off Power Whirl and Power Style, but also have incredible amounts of range damage, because your Power Rake does count as a range attack pretty much. It can hit things like Zoanthropes and Neurothropes, and that is made even better on the Xenophase Blade we'll get into in a bit. Next weapon here is the Combat Knife. This is the worst one in the game. I'm putting this one, actually I'm putting it in D tier. There is no reason to use the relic tier combat knives in this game anymore, because the Argent Edge and the Power Gladius are just strictly better versions of like all the combat knife options on the relic tier. The only one you might possibly use is the block version if you really want to use a block variant of the combat knife, but that's just not as strong as the other options. I really do think this one has been totally power crept. The base versions really need like a rework or something, because the heroic variants are so damn strong for this weapon that there is just like no point to take a normal combat knife anymore. So I'm putting that down into D tier. Now the next weapon here is the Omniscion Axe. This weapon is very strong. I would almost put this one the S tier, but the thing is, the Tech Marine is like the only class that can use this weapon, and that's also a good thing because he's the only class that could ever use this weapon effectively as well, because the way the Omniscion Axe works is that your heavy attacks like discharge and like your massive double slams, these are only really functional in Tech Marine thanks to his no animation gun strikes, because you can stagger enemies after a parry into your own charge attacks and just like double combo one shot Majoris in the game. The horde clear on this weapon is incredible. The charging attack is amazing to just like ram through Minoris enemies and get armor back relentlessly. And I would say this could definitely be argued an S tier weapon, but it does fall off a little bit where like some of the other weapons do not. So I would say it also goes into like the top of A. I think like this and the Thunder Hammer are both very powerful attacks, and I'm also pretty sure the Thunder Hammer and the Omniscient Axe have the same hitbox. Now for the next melee weapon, we do take the Power Fist here. Now the Power Fist is the best weapon in Space Marine 2 still. This weapon is cracked. The block Power Fist is incredible on Bulwark and Assault. The balance Power Fist is also incredible on these classes because the cleaving potential there is just tremendous and the base damage is actually higher than the block weapon. The Power Fist is a range weapon effectively. If you're unaware, the charge attacks of this weapon with the Tide of Battle perk will give you a 20-meter range on your thrust jabs, which basically makes your Power Fist a ranged weapon that punches Zoanthropes and Neurothropes out of the sky. You can cleave multiple enemies, one-shot Majoris on hard strats and Absolute. This weapon has been top tier for ages. Hell, the Power Fist was top tier back in like patch 8, and they buffed up the block version. They've also buffed the balance version since then, just like they buffed the Power Axe. So Power Fist, S tier, best weapon in Space Marine 2 overall. There are other weapons that perform better than the Power Fist in like some particular scenarios. Like sometimes the Power Axe stagger can be better, sometimes the Thunder Hammer AoE can be stronger, but the Power Fist overall is just the best in the most scenarios, in my opinion. So for that reason, is at the top of S. Now, the next thing we have here is the Xenophase Blade for our heroic weapons. Now, the Xenophase Blade, I think this is the best balanced power sword in the game because the heroic perk effect here is called Ancient Technology. This gives you a 20% damage buff on your power rakes, but it also gives you a wider angle on those power rakes. But contrary to popular belief, or I should say, opposed to what most people actually think, this is not just a wider angle, it is also or horizontal angle, it's also a vertical angle. So your power rake's vertical angle is getting increased as well, is affected by this buff, which means you have a significantly easier time chopping Zoanthropes and Neurothropes and Lion Zangors out of the sky. And also the heroic tier here, or the heroic weapon effect here, helps out the horde clear a ton. So I would say this one is firmly A. I would say it's like, you know, it's on the level of the other power sword. It's not like strictly better. I think it's like, it might be better than the balance options, but the block version of the power sword here is still better for things like Power World. The Xenophase is just better for like anti-air and stuff like that. So very strong options. They're pretty comparable though. Next weapon here is the Storm's Dominion. This is way worse than like most options for the Thunder Hammer. Now, the Storm's Dominion, a lot of people like this weapon because it puts out shock areas, but I'll be honest guys, this is one of the weakest heroic weapons in the entire game currently, mainly because the Thunder Hammer really wants like pure damage on the ground slam and aftershock, and that is where most of your attack damage really just comes from on this weapon. And even though the Storm's Dominion actually has the best stat spread for any fencing Thunderhammer option in the game, that being said, it is still weaker in like the block and balance options by significant margins. So for that reason, Storm's Dominion I would say firmly goes into the C tier. The shock areas are not bad. Like with a Bulwark, with an Assault, you can do some goofy stuff, but like this is more of a gimmick effect than like a proper strong one. And the only time I ever find myself really using this weapon is with like Intimidating Aura or a Gunstrike build, because fencing on a Thunder Hammer is just not that strong, and the normal relic tier options are just generally better for balance and block by a significant margin. And that's pretty much all there is for this one. Next we have the Double Ez Relic. Now I know I misnamed it here, but this one I would honestly go as far to say this one's also C tier. I think that it's kind of fallen off a bit. Now the funny thing here is that you have a combo skip on this weapon where you can skip to your stomp pretty easily. The heroic perk effect is called Fist Fight. You will go immediately into a punch instead of a kick on your chainsword attack, and you will also have the option to skip to your stomp and use a double stomp with more heavy attack damage. So it is good for that. That being said, the new White Scars chainsword is actually better for stomping than this weapon is, and also just better overall. And I would also say the balance window here really hurts this weapon. If this is a block weapon, it would feel way better, because the big issue here is A double stomp is pretty good in Space Marine 2 in theory. The issue comes that if you have a balanced parry window, you don't have the stagger of the Adrenaline Surge charges of the White Scar's Chainsword, and because of that, you can't actually stagger the enemies into your stomp as easily. So a lot of times when you are using the double edge relic tier here or heroic tier, it is just going to get interrupted all the time, which feels pretty awful. So for that reason, I would say it's more of a gimmick effect. It's not awful, just like the Storm Minion. It's just that it kind of underperforms compared to the better relic tier options here. Next perk here, or next weapon here, is Death's Grasp. This is the Heroic Power Fist with the Heroic Perk Effect Follow-Up Shot. This gives you 200% bonus light attack damage and cuts your heavy attack damage in half, and you also get a Gunstrike opportunity after every single execute. So this weapon is really strong for new players. Like, the light attack damage here is very substantial. You will get a ton of armor back on armor reinforcement builds because of that, and this is a very strong weapon. Like, I think this one is firmly up here in the A tier. I do think it is weaker like the block and balance fist because these ones just like nuclear bomb bosses and stuff like that. But as far as like overall effectiveness is concerned for hard strats and operations, Death's Grasp is super easy to use, super effective, and when you build it around like armor reinforcement with all those gun strikes, you will have a very easy time in your game, especially against Tyranids. So really strong option. Next thing we have here is the White Scar's Chainsword. This is one of the best melee weapons in the entire game right now. This gives you 3 Adrenaline Surge stacks. This is newly added to patch 13, and I have to say, the White Scar's Chainsword is like up here in the S tier. It is significantly better than like all the relic tier chainsword options. The speed here gives you a ton of utility, and the damage here is top tier as well. It also allows you to do things like stagger enemies into your stomp attacks. This thing can like one combo extremist and stuff like that. It is a top tier weapon in the game currently, and really, this is just one of the most entertaining weapons to use in the game, period. The speed increase here brings us back to like the Artificer Chainsword from patch 8 and below, and because of that, it just feels really fun to use this weapon. It does a ton of damage, it is good on all difficulties and all game modes, and having a block weapon like this is just super great to have in the game again. I think this one firmly goes up in the S and is above most weapons in Space Marine 2 currently. Next weapon we have here is the Argent Edge. This also goes up in the S. This is the best fencing weapon in all of Space Marine 2, mainly because every single parry you do with this weapon will give you a Gunstrike opportunity, and a Gunstrike opportunity staggering an enemy, that is not only going to give you more Gunstrike perk effects, but you will also just have a way safer time against stun locks in the game, because some of the most annoying enemies in Space Marine 2 are things like a melee Terminator, things like a Lictor or a Ravener triple hit comboing you, where you can't just instantaneously, like, you know, get your parry off for a gun strike immediately, and you're stuck in these like combo chains that you're forced to block or parry. And this one, removing those enemies from their own combo chains, it is god tier for that alone, but also has a very high base damage, and you also do damage on every single parry. And the only downside of this weapon is that the actual block window here, or the perfect parry window, is closer to a block weapon, so it's a little bit harder to use for like newer players, but it is a top tier option, definitely the best fencing weapon in all of Space Marine 2. Next weapon here is the Power Gladius. Now, the Power Gladius is, in my opinion, still a top tier weapon in Space Marine 2. It's definitely a top tier heroic option. I don't know if I'd firmly put it in the S tier overall. Actually, no, I definitely would, because the perk effect here is called Agile Strike. Every perfect dodge, you will get a 120% melee damage buff to your next attack with a 1 second lingering duration, and that can be stacked up to 3 times for a 360% damage buff. And on a class like Tactical, you can straight up one-shot a boss off Auspex and a double Shadow Stab with those stacks off in the proper setup, and that alone kind of puts it up here. This weapon has come in clutch so many times because in Space Marine 2, being able to damage nuke is such a potent effect, and this does that phenomenally well. The only issue I have with this weapon is that it is a balanced parry window, so it is overall like less safe than the Argent Edge. But that being said, if you're playing like a sniper or something, you can go cloak. It's very easy to use, and also the melee damage here is top tier, and it's firmly above like every single combat knife option in the game, in my opinion. Now, the next weapon here is the Ultima Ratio. D tier, this weapon sucks ass. The Ultima Ratio is just a garbage weapon in Space Marine 2. The Omniscient Axe rush damage here is actually worse than the balanced version, on top of hitting like no breakpoints for your Mighty Blast perk to like double combo enemies. This is like such a gimmick weapon. It may technically be like the best fencing option for the Omniscient Axe, but fencing on the Omniscient Axe isn't that strong in the first place, so firmly down to D tier. This is probably not only like the worst melee weapon in the game, but also the worst heroic in the game, so for that reason, down here. And now that next weapon we have here is the Encarmine Power Axe. Now, this is a brand new Power Axe heroic variant in Space Marine 2 patch 13. The heroic perk effect here is called Sanguine Edge. You are able to store up your riposte after a perfect parry or perfect block. Well, in this case, it's perfect block because it's a block weapon. So you are able to store up your power backstep and use it on command with a heavy attack after a power stance, which is super nice. And the big thing here is you are giving up damage on the relic tier option for the Power Axe and like doubling your speed on your attacks, and your cleaving potential here is tremendous. And like I said at the beginning of this video, you are able to hit more enemies now with Power Wave than you were in patch 12, and that affected this weapon a ton. You can really line up a huge power riposte on this weapon, and it's really fun to use. I would say the utility here is quite high. I don't think I would quite rank it above the standard Power Axe, but if you want to put this up in the S tier, it's pretty damn close. You know what, I'll put it up here because I think this one is pretty comparable to the other relic tier options, and the relic tier options are all in the S tier here, so it's kind of unfair to not put this one up here as well. I think these are all great choices, and that is pretty much all there is for the melee weapon tier list here, guys. I think this is a pretty fair placement of all these weapons currently. I really do think we should take a look at like these four at the bottom, the combat knife and ultimate ratio especially. Like this weapon here needs like a whole perk rework, but for the most part they're all in a pretty good spot, and like these ones just need like a bit of a buff to like their overall damage or just perk effects. Like maybe that would help out a bit, but the balance window here is holding this one back, and the shock area is just not remotely as damaging as it should be. And that's pretty much all there is for this one, guys. Let me know what weapon you think is best for the melee weapons here among the heroics and the relic tier. I know a lot of people have conflicting opinions, and just keep in mind, guys, just because something is up here in the S tier does not mean you cannot use the B tier chainsaw, does not mean you cannot use things like the normal combat knife. Use whatever you want in Space Marine 2. It is your game. You do not have to listen to me and just like only pick top tier options, because Space Marine 2 is not about just like grinding out the best possible build 24/7. The whole reason we have like, over a dozen melee weapons now for the heroic and normal relic tier is because it's just to give you more build variety, and more build variety is what keeps these games fun in the first place. Just keep that in mind. And if you like content like this, subscribe for more. And as always, thanks for watching. If you want to watch me live, to ask me questions about the game, or just come hang out, you can find me here on YouTube or on Twitch with a link in the video description, and also a link to my community Discord. Hey guys, first regards from here, and so I'll be talking about every single primary weapon in Space Marine 2 patch 13 for the Purgation update and tier listing them. Now, a lot of you have asked me to compare the relic tier with the heroic tier, so I will be doing that today. And I want to say before we even get into this that there really is no like god awful primary in Space Marine 2 right now, except for one. And if you want to use like a C tier, B tier, A tier weapon, you can definitely do that. Use whatever gun you think is the most fun. That is up to you. This is just my opinion on how strong they are in comparison to each other, and that's not to say they're all bad if they're in like the C tier and stuff like that. So with no further ado, we're gonna start off with the auto bolt rifle. This is the worst weapon in the entire game, probably. This weapon is so bad because it has a limited perk tree. It's like just overall ammo economy is pretty shit for like any class but the tactical. If you take this thing on Tech Marine, you're like kind of trolling yourself to the point that like I kind of forget this weapon's actually on Tech Marine sometimes. And the only reason this weapon is pretty much ever functional is because the tactical class is so strong on his perk tree selection that kind of makes up for like the god awful damage here. But pretty much every single other weapon in the game is better than this at the moment, and this weapon's actually so bad that this is supposed to be like the combi melt over here is supposed to be a heroic variant of the auto bolt rifle. However, the auto bolt rifle tree is so dog shit, they put this one as a bolt rifle variant because it just makes more sense there to actually use the perk tree, and this one for that reason goes directly in the D tier. It's the worst weapon. There really is no reason to use this, but if you want to, you definitely can. Next weapon here is the Stalker bolt rifle. This is the premier DMR in the game. This one is available on the tactical and sniper class, and the headshot damage here is very strong. You can nuke down zoanthropes and neurothropes very easily with this weapon, especially in patch 13, because the neurothropes got an HP debuff in this patch, and now the stalker bolt rifle just kind of nukes them harder than ever. I would say this one firmly goes in the A tier. There are some points where I do think some other weapons are really good in the headshot, just like this one is, like the marksman carbine I'll get into later. And even though this one is very strong on the headshot and CHP recovery, the horde clear here is obviously lacking, and like unless you have a powerful secondary or you're playing with the sniper class, that can sometimes hurt the tactical. But overall, A tier weapon for sure. Definitely nukes down Majoris, Extremis, and the Terminus at times as long as you land those headshots. The next weapon here is the heavy bolt rifle. Now, in patch 13, all of the bolter weapons have better body shot damage. They changed around a bunch of the headshot damage calcs on this, and because of that, the heavy bolt rifle feels pretty good right now. I would say it's not like quite in the A tier. I wouldn't say it's like on the level of a marksman carbine, standard bolt carbine options, stuff like that. It's just a heavy bolt rifle is much stronger than before. I think it is a solid weapon in the game, and on the tactical class with the crack and penetrate around perk for 50% bonus body shot damage, this one feels pretty damn good, and the headshot damage is also quite decent, and the CHP recovery is decent as well. So for that reason, B tier. If you want to move this one up into A tier, I think that's pretty fair. I'm not going to argue with you there, but in my opinion, this one's B. Next weapon here is the Oculus Bolt Carbine. This is another weapon I think is kind of like middle of the road. The headshot multiplier version of this is by far the best in my opinion. It does perform pretty well on the Tech Marine and the Vanguard class, but that being said, I do think there are better options for both of those classes with things like the Marksman Carbine on the Vanguard or the Standard Bolt Carbine, and on the Tech Marine especially, you have the Deathwatch Heroic Heavy Bolt Rifle, or just some of those better options here with stuff like the Bolt Rifle and stuff like that, or Combi Melta. So Oculus Bolt Carbine, not bad, not terrible, I would say, or excuse me, not great, not terrible. I would say B tier for now. It's pretty strong, you know. If you want to take this for headshot damage, it is quite good in the zoanthropes. It does have a very accurate fire just because of the scope on top of the accuracy variant having that headshot buff as well. So if you want to take this, you definitely can. I would just put it in the B. Next weapon here is the automatic bolt carbine. This weapon's contested health recovery is incredible in Space Marine 2. This is one of the best weapons in the entire game for Chaos because of that, because as long as you have ammunition here, you just don't really lose your HP. Like, if anything lowers your CHP down by like 90%, all you have to do is just hold down the trigger and you will get back your HP as long as you land those headshots. And the hip fire here with perks like Home Precision that reduce your maximum weapon spread by 50% is basically a laser beam. The bolt carbine feels really good in this game right now. I'd say this is one of the better options overall in the entire game. So A tier for sure, very strong option. If you want to take this on like any class it's available on, you can't go wrong. And as of patch 13, with crack and penetrator rounds on the tactical, you will just shred through the Minoris enemies on absolute hard strats to like an absurd degree. It is super fun to do, so if you haven't tried that, you definitely should. Next weapon here is the carpal tunnel machine, the Marksman Carbine. Now, the Marksman Carbine has a really powerful variant as of like patch 12 onward. Back in patch 12, they buffed up the base damage of the ammo reserve option, and now it's just like the de facto go-to version for this gun because it has like double the magazine capacity of the headshot multiplier version. It has almost equivalent damage to the headshot multiplier version on the actual headshot, and also has a tremendous ammo reserve. And for that reason, I think this one's up in the A. I think it's much stronger than it used to be. I used to put it down like B back in like patch 11, but these days the carpal tunnel machine, that is its major downside. The CHP recovery here is pretty high, the damage is great, the ammo economy is phenomenal. The ammo economy on this gun is actually so good, you do not need to take like any ammo regen perks on it to do well with it. So a really powerful option, up in the A. Next weapon here is the Bolt Sniper. I would say the Bolt Sniper is okay. I might put this one in the C. It does like one-shot zoanthropes with the proper setup occasionally, but let's be real. If you were taking a Bolt Sniper, you're probably taking the Heroic one, because the Heroic one is just like a strict upgrade to this one, in my opinion. The only downside is that this one has a way worse ammo economy if you don't land your headshots. That's really more of a skill issue. And if you do feel like less comfortable with landing headshots, this one is definitely better, but the performance is significantly worse. I would say if you're planning on using a sniper, it's not the Heroic Bolt Sniper, I'd probably just take the last Fusel, and for that reason, Bolt Sniper probably goes down to C. it's not bad. Like, you can one-shot zoanthropes, like I said. You can do tremendous damage to neurothropes, and as long as you're able to manage your ammo economy with your versatile precision prestige perk, it is pretty good. I just think there are better sniper options in the game, like the next one with the Last Fusel. The Last Fusel is still a top tier weapon in Space Marine 2 for both Chaos and Tyranids. I think this weapon is very powerful. I would think this is the first S tier we have on the list. It may not be as strong as every other weapon I would put on the S tier, but if you build for like a beam amplification on a radius on your beam, and also build for ammo economy, you can have a very strong headshot weapon on top of a very ammo efficient weapon that will also heal you or give itself a damage buff. Last Fusel has been a top tier option since Space Marine 2 came out, and it really has not changed, and pretty much every variant of this is quite powerful. And if you combine this weapon with the Argent Edge on top of like a targeted shot, it is super strong. And in fact, the rate of fire version can get so high you can get 2 shots off with the 75% damage buff if you are quick with the proper perk setup. So really strong, S tier for sure. Next weapon here is the standard bolt rifle. It's not the grenade launcher portion, this is just the normal one. I would say this one is also like C tier. There is really no reason to take this over like the heavy bolt rifle in my opinion, or the marksman carbine, or bolt carbine, or stalker bolt rifle. It is super middle of the road. They did buff it up a couple times. The ×2 headshot multiplier version is okay. So like if you want to say because of that ×2 headshot accuracy variant, it goes into B, that is pretty fair, but I think there are just better options now, and the better option in my opinion would be the grenade launcher. The grenade launcher bolt rifle is, in my opinion, S tier, because grenades in Space Marine 2, when you fire off a single grenade in this game, you will get back like all of your contested health instantaneously, and this weapon is available on 2 of the squishiest classes in all of Space Marine 2, being the Tech Marine and Tactical. Now, Tech Marine Space Marine 2 has the lowest HP total in the entire game, tied with the Sniper class. However, unlike the Sniper class, you do not have a proper health damage reduction. So when your armor breaks and you are knocked over on Tech Marine, having an option like this to just one-shot an enemy with a grenade and get back all of your health is incredibly valuable for you. This is a S tier weapon for sure, and in the siege mode, you can just buy ammo boxes on tack over and over with this gun, and the perk tree is set up a little bit better than the heroic heavy bolt rifle in my opinion for grenade spam, and because of that, S tier for sure. I think like that CHP recovery and AoE damage nuking potential is just godly, and there are also some bugs of this weapon like crack and penetrator perks right now that kind of break it, but even without that, it's still up here in my opinion. Next weapon here is the Instigator Carbine. I think this one is like C tier. The only problem is that you pretty much never need the Instigator Carbine relic tier options because the heroic version is just so much better in this game. This one has higher DPS. It fits the playstyle of Instigator Carbine far more because the Instigator Carbine is like a close to medium range weapon. This one is on Vanguard, it is on the Sniper class, and usually if you were taking these weapons, it is because you were building for things like Tactical Ambush or obviously your Grapnel Launcher, and the Wrapped Instigator is super accurate at like medium to close range anyways, and the only place this really outperforms this one is at long range, but you're not taking this for long range regardless, because if you're going for a long range build on a Sniper class, you're probably not taking an Instigator Carbine. You're probably taking a Bolt Sniper. You're probably taking a Stalker Bolt Rifle. You're probably taking a Last Fusel. So for that reason, I would say this one goes down to C because it is totally power crept by the Wrapped Instigator Carbine. Now, this brings us to the Melter Rifle. The Melter Rifle is still an amazing gun in Space Marine 2. It's also one of the easiest guns to use in the entire game because it gives you HP back off of things like Rapid Health. You have armor regen off the perk Trick Shot every 30 seconds. And this one is also a very ammo efficient weapon because on its best perk tree setup, you have the perk Decisive Reload that will give you 1 ammo back every single execute when this weapon is equipped, which is super strong for Vanguard that has no other ammo regen perks that are remotely as good. So for that reason, I think the Melter Rifle goes up into A. It is great for staggering chaos. It is amazing on Tactical and Vanguard, and there are also a ton of ways to build this in like your actual perk tree for the class, because you can take things like Emperor's Judgment on the Tactical class and do just fine with this weapon because it is just not ammo efficient on its own. And also the Horde Clear here and CHP recovery is top tier, and for new players especially, this is a top tier option. So I would say A tier for sure. And this brings us into the big brother of the Melter Rifle here, which is the Multi-Melta. Multi-Melta's S tier. I don't think anyone's gonna disagree with that. There was a bug with this, or like a unintended perk interaction, where you could just go into heavy stance and go out of your heavy stance and just double fire this because they were on separate cooldowns for your shots. So basically, you would enter heavy stance, fire one shot, exit heavy stance, and fire one shot immediately after, or vice versa, which was like pretty goofy, pretty broken. They nerfed that a while back. But that being said, the multi-melta was already S tier before that was even a thing, so I would still say it goes up in the top tree here. This just kind of trivializes content in Space Marine 2 because the heavy class is just so tanky that when you stack on a fat weapon like this to just horde clear and AoE stagger enemies relentlessly, it's just ridiculous. And the only thing this kind of struggles with is boss damage, but that being said, you don't care that much because you have like a pocket plasma pistol with a heroic plasma that you can definitely use instead of like having your primary be your main boss killer. And for that reason, I think the multi-melta is still up in the S tier. And this kind of makes up for like any CHP regen you would have. And in patch 13 especially, if you are taking the multi-melta, you're probably going to take the heroic plasma pistol, which is just like, a secondary heavy plasma incinerator. So really strong for that. Now, the next weapon here is the heavy plasma. Heavy plasma is, in my opinion, still S. The only thing holding this weapon back is the balanced parry window and the ammo economy. The ammo economy here is shit. Let's be very clear, guys. The ammo economy on this gun is not very strong. You very much have to build into that, and even with the ammo economy perks on heavy, you will still struggle occasionally, but the damage here is incredible. All the variants are quite strong. I would say the weakest one is probably the venting speed version, but the magazine capacity and rate of fire version, top tier weapons in Space Marine 2, even the common shots on this thing without like the charge shots for AoE are still very powerful. And this one, just like its heroic variant I'll get into later, are both top tier weapons. And if you're trying to nuke enemies, it's just a big fat gun that's a big fat amount of damage. And that's really all you need in Space Marine 2 in a lot of cases. The next weapon here is definitely not S tier, and that is the Pyre Cannon. This is, in my opinion, the worst heavy stance weapon in Space Marine 2 currently, and I'll explain why. So basically, the Pyre Cannon requires you as a heavy to just sit there and like dump out fire over and over, and that is pretty effective. Burn is still a very strong effect in patch 13. They did nerf it by like 20% against the terminus enemies, but that being said, your burn damage against bosses is still incredible because a 20% nerf on the burn damage is not that important in Space Marine 2, I'm to be honest. It feels more like the weapon is just functioning how it should, because before it was just kind of nuts how much damage you can do just off of like one burn volley. But the Pyre Cannon is far worse than its cousin, the Pyro Blaster, mainly because the class synergy with heavy is just not quite there, because the heavy class in general, he is just not able to sit there and just absorb this, because every single other weapon on the heavy class has way better contested health recovery on its heavy stance. Like multi-melt will get you your HP back. You are able to sit there and dump out shots because you are tanky and you're recovering your CHP. Heavy plasma is the same way with common shots, and the heroic heavy bolter and heavy bolter are also like that. This weapon's contested health recovery is very low, which means in a lot of cases you will just have to like move away and like not shoot out your full volley because you're just gonna die if you do. So for that reason, I would say this one goes in like B. I think it's one of the weaker options in the game currently for the heavy stance. The burn damage is obviously top tier, so if you want to put this up in A, you can, but if you want burn damage, I would just take the next weapon instead, which is the Pyre Blaster. This one got nerfed on the burn damage just like the Pyre Cannon did, but that being said, it's still S tier. Pyre Blaster is still one of the best guns in the entire game. It will still just purge everything in Space Marine 2 for you on like hard strats and absolute difficulty. The places this falls off is like in siege mode at times because the damage reduction of the enemies is kind of nuts, but that being said, Pyre Blaster is just that gun. I mean, all you have to do on tactical is just walk around, purge enemies. If you ever lose your HP because you're a tactical class, you just pull out a rate of fire plasma pistol and immediately go back to burning all the enemies. And also the burn damage here will be upped by your Auspex scan. So like this weapon alone is why Promethean prices went up by like 50 billion%, because it is just that broken. It's been top tier ever since patch 10, even with a burn nerf. It's still godly because all it has to do is just purge enemies, and all you have to do is just walk around and hip fire and you'll kill everything. So S tier for sure, top tier option, probably the overall best weapon in the entire game, but that's just my opinion. Next weapon here is the Heavy Bolter. This weapon is the relic tier option. I would say this one goes up into the A tier. I think it's pretty good. I think there's not much reason to use this over the Chains of Duty, but there are some like damage buffs you can do here. There are also some accuracy buffs. So like as opposed to the Instigator Carbine that's down the C tier because it is completely power crept by the Wrapped Instigator, this one is actually, it does have some use case scenarios where you would want this over your heroic one sometimes for like some niche stuff. And because of that, I would say the Heavy Bolter goes up into A. And the thing about this gun is in patch 13, all the bolter buffs, they also apply to this weapon for the body shot damage as well. And all the heavy bolters feel way better now. And because of that, I think it firmly belongs in the A as it always has, but it's even better than it used to be. So I'm putting it up top. Next weapon here is the Plasma Incinerator Primary. This weapon got buffed on the shard shot damage and the common shot damage in patch 13, and it is really strong now. Double plasma on tactical is very powerful with range damage buffs like plasma boost, and I would actually go as far to say this weapon might belong in like the S tier. It's like, it's really fucking strong, guys. It might, maybe A tier's more fair, but Plasma's been held back for so long in Space Marine 2. I'm gonna give its time in the sun. I'm gonna give its time in the sun. It's gonna go up here into the S tier. This weapon is really strong right now. This was the worst weapon on Tech Marine for a long time. It feels way better on him as well. The contested health recovery, the ability to just damage enemies on the common shot. That common shot buff really helped out things like transhuman physiology on the tactical as well. It gives you a 30% increase on your contested health recovery on range attacks. And because of that, the AoE damage of these new common shots, you can survive against like Hormigaunt hordes by just spamming light combos with a hip fire. A really fun option. I'm gonna put it at the bottom of S tier because it's a good gun. Someone say bad, it's a good gun. If you want to use this on any class, you definitely can. Next weapon here is our first heroic option with the Wrapped Instigator Carbine. This one is A tier. The DPS of this thing is very high if you land all your headshots. All you have to do is just like point blank shoot enemies like tip of the spear on a Vanguard. You can like one combo Majora's with this gun on the sniper class of targeted shot on like the range enemies like Rubric Marines, or with the Vanguard if you grapple to them and just like one burst them. This one has a 5-round burst as opposed to the 3-round burst here, but also has a higher base damage. It means your overall DPS is significantly higher on this one than the one down here, and the ammo economy is also quite strong. So top tier option, A tier for sure. Next weapon here is the Wrapped Bolt Sniper Rifle. This is the best weapon on the sniper class, in my opinion, if you hit every headshot. Now, 99% of players are not going to do that, so I would still say the last few can be better for them, but Bolt Sniper Rifle, S tier for sure. This one just one-shots Zoan throws. It one-shots everything, okay? If you hit your headshots, you just one-shot literally everything in Space Marine 2. All you have to do is just run around or use remote threat and just one-shot Majora's over and over and over. The only time this one sucks is on Chaos against like Chaos Spawn, stuff like that. But that being said, Wrapped Bolt Sniper Rifle, definitely up here in the S tier. I'm going to put it like right here with Last Fusel. I think they're pretty comparable to each other, but the Bolt Sniper Rifle, its damage output is like unmatched if you actually use the proper headshots. Next weapon here is the Chains of Duty Heroic Heavy Bolter. This one is also S tier, in my opinion. I think this one's actually better than all the other heavy weapons because at the moment, for operations and hard stratagems, having a fencing parry window with this newly buffed heavy bolter is incredible because Chains of Duty has 2 major buffs to it, actually 3. So number one, you have a fencing parry window with this weapon on the heavy class, which is like already puts it way above like balanced weapon options, but you also get a 50% increased parry window on top of that, making it very powerful against Chaos Spawn versus Chaos. And on top of all of that, you also get a 0 startup on your maximum fire rate. So the standard heavy bolter here, when you pull down the trigger, you have to build up to your max fire rate. This one goes off immediately from like 0 to 100. So very powerful option for that. That lets you get a tremendous amount of damage out, which is super nice. And I would say overall, Chains of Duty just makes all the missions go far more smoothly. And like the only time I would take other options is like maybe in the siege mode or for like unique hard strats, but this one's overall the best in my opinion. The next weapon here is the Combi Melta. This weapon's like firmly B tier. I think this one's pretty good. It has a place in the game. The Melta portions here are only better than like the grenade launcher sometimes for the hard strats and operations because you are able to get back all of your Melta rounds off of a single ammo cache. Grenade launchers will only get back from loadout stations and stuff like the ammo boxes on the map, which isn't too bad, but like this one especially, much better on the ammo economy and pretty good for triggering like rapid health perk effects, but not super strong on the gun portion, and the CHP recovery here is not quite as high as the grenade launcher. Next weapon here is the Heroic Heavy Plasma. This one is also S tier. This is just a full auto plasma that never overheats pretty much if you like reload after every shot. shot, and the CHP recovery and AoE of your common shots on the heavy plasma is very strong. The only thing that sucks about this weapon, like all heavy plasma options, is the god awful ammo economy, and because of that, I would say you gotta be a little careful with this one, or like build into like more particular perk trees on the heavy class, like additional supplies. But even with that being said, it's very strong up here in the S because it pretty much is just like an alternative to the heavy plasma, so they're pretty equivalent to each other. Next weapon here is the heroic heavy bolt rifle Death Watch. This one, I kind of have to put this up in the S. Like, this is pretty comparable. It's just a grenade launcher heavy bolt rifle, okay? And on the Tech Marine, that is the best gun in the entire game for him, in my opinion. Like, it's either that or, like, one of these two. Let's put it this way. Tech Marine, best option for him is either grenade launcher bolt rifle or grenade launcher Death Watch. Pick your poison. They're both top-tier options, and it turns out, all it takes to get a heavy bolt rifle from the B tier into the S tier is attaching a giant fucking grenade launcher to it. So I would say it firmly goes up here. S tier for sure. Death Watch heavy bolt rifle is a top tier option in Space Marine 2. It's not very strong on the heavy class, mainly because it doesn't benefit from heavy stance perks. But that being said, if you want to take this gun to like level up the heavy class, tactical, and tech marine simultaneously, you can definitely do that. And that's pretty much all there is for this tier list, guys. I think this is a pretty fair ranking. You know, none of these guns are like particularly bad, like bolt sniper rifle, bolt rifle, instigator carbine, auto bolt rifle even. You can use these. They just struggle more than some of the other ones do. And you guys can let me know what you guys think should be in like the S tier, A tier, or B tier, and which weapon is your favorite. But if you like content like this, subscribe for more. If you watch me live to ask me questions about the game or just come hang out, you have me here on YouTube or on Twitch with a link in the video description. I'll also have a link to my community Discord. And as always, thank you for watching. Take it easy. Bye. Hey guys, first regards in here, and I'll be talking about every single secondary weapon in Space Marine 2 patch 13 for the Purgation update. And now we will be talking about the brand new bolt carbine secondary we have here on top of the heroic variants, because a lot of you have asked for me to cover like all the heroic options in comparison to the relic tier. So we'll be doing that today, starting off with the Inferno pistol. Now, the Inferno pistol is a pretty good gun in Space Marine 2 right now. For a long time, this weapon had horrific gun strike damage, but they did buff that up in like patch 12, and ever since, I think this is actually a pretty top tier secondary option. I would put the Inferno pistol in A. It has great ammo economy, great CHP regen, and also armor regen for classes that usually lack that. It also fits very well into builds that like want some Hormigaunt horde clear and stuff like that for Minoris enemies, so a really good option. And the gun strikes may not be ridiculously damaging on this still, but they do have like a massive AoE effect, and the stagger here is very nice. If you're unaware, for a lot of the classes in Space Marine 2, having a stagger on your secondary is super nice for like missile cannon terminators, because if they are shooting their minigun at you, being able to like one-shot them and stagger them with a weapon like this is super valuable for your build. So Inferno pistol kind of firmly goes into the A tier because of that for me. Now the next weapon here is the Neo Volkite. Now this weapon got buffed up in patch 13. They have upped the heat speed, and they have also upped the contested health recovery. It feels way better now. My main issue with the Neo Volkite though is that this weapon does not fit very well as like a melee class secondary in my opinion. So like Assault and Bulwark, I don't like this weapon that much on them. When it comes to classes that already have a primary option, like the Tech Marine, like the Vanguard, this one's actually pretty good. I used to put it down here in the B, but I think it has moved up into the A. The heat speed increase feels significantly better. The contested health recovery buff is a little less substantial in my opinion, but the big utility of the Neo Volkite is that you can one-shot spore mines, you just laser beam all the cultists. It is a very strong weapon for that, and on a class that has a primary option, I think that's firmly in the A, and like for maybe a melee class I put in the B, but still, overall, Neo Volkite's pretty good at the moment. Next perk here, or next weapon here, is the Heavy Bolt Pistol. Now, the Heavy Bolt Pistol is still S tier, okay? This is still one of the best weapons in the game. They also fixed up the gun strike values to be pre-patch 13 values in 13.1 for the hotfix, so the Heavy Bolt Pistol Firepower variant and the Heroic edition we'll get into later, these all have very high gun strike damage, and this one is a very good option for dealing with zoanthropes and stuff like that. On a lot of the melee builds for Bulwark and Assault, I do find myself taking the Heavy Bolt Pistol over the Plasma Pistol for the Tyranid faction, mainly because the headshot multiplier here is just very strong for us against those zoanthropes and neurothropes, and the ammo reserve option is actually pretty ammo efficient, so S tier for sure for like gun strike damage, just like a general use case scenario. Next weapon here is the Plasma Pistol. This weapon is also S tier. They actually buffed this one up in patch 13, and the rate of fire version was already like a god tier weapon in Space Marine 2 for the secondary options in patch 12 and below. And these days, the plasma pistol in like every single variant is very strong. Even its heroic option is also S tier, and we'll get into that later. But the plasma pistol here, top tier CHP recovery, top tier damage output on classes like tactical especially. It is a super strong and versatile secondary option. The only place this gun kind of sucks is number one, the ammo economy, because it's not very ammo efficient, and also just like the general ability to do headshot damage at all, because all the plasma weapons in Space Marine 2 lack a headshot damage multiplier. So enemies like a Neurothrope or Zoanthrope, they are a little more obnoxious to the plasma pistol, but that being said, its upsides more than make up for that and is firmly an S tier weapon in my opinion. Now the next one here is the standard bolt pistol. I think this one is pretty good in the game. I'd probably put this up in the A tier, I think. Now, the bolt pistol got a damage buff a while back. The gun strike damage is also quite high on this now as well. And ever since like patch 11 with the buff they did for this in the Reclamation update, it's been pretty good on all variants. Like the damage here is quite strong and the CHP recovery is quite high. Now, for a long time, the bolt pistol was like really suffering because your contested health recovery on this weapon just sucked ass. And like I mentioned before, on the melee classes in Space Marine 2, lacking contested health recovery from your secondary just sucks on those classes because they really do rely on range fire in a lot of cases to recover their CHP, so you are limiting yourself tremendously on these weapons. If they don't have a contested health recovery, it's pretty high, so this weapon getting buffed there firmly puts in the A for me. Now, the next weapon here is the new secondary bolt carbine. This weapon is interesting, okay? So this one definitely needs a buff. Let's be very clear. The secondary bolt carbine needs a buff in Space Marine 2. Its damage output is just not where it should be, like pretty flat out, I'd say. I think most players have been struggling with like killing Zoanthropes, even at point blank at times for this thing. The ammo economy is all right on this one, but that would definitely be buffed up by a damage increase. And my bigger issue with the bolt carbine is that the perk tree is very limited. There are 4 perks in the top row of this weapon that just suck ass for like the entire setup of like the weapon's archetype, I guess, where like you have a reduced spread, you have things like a remote threat for more damage at range. I don't really know what Saber was trying to cook on the bolt carbine. The gun strike damage here is also not that high. It's pretty comparable to the Inferno pistol, if not like a little bit higher. But overall, the secondary bolt carbine, I think it is firmly in the B. This weapon is really only good because its contested health recovery is very high, and this is also only found on the Bulwark and Assault, and because of that, they do want that contested health recovery. And I have taken this into Chaos and Tyranids on hard strats and Absolute, and it does perform pretty well there in the solo for like maintaining your HP, so for that reason I would not put it in like the C or D tier, but it definitely needs a base damage buff. The damage here is definitely lacking, and hopefully they fix that in the future. So for now, B tier bolt carbine, not great, not terrible. Next weapon here is the Retribution's Bequest heroic heavy bolt pistol. This weapon is in the S tier in my opinion. It's kind of hard not to put this up here for putting the heavy bolt pistol up here, because this is really like a side grade to the relic tier options. The ammo economy here is a bit worse, but your base damage is much higher, and the heroic perk effect here is called No Help Is Coming. Every time you body shot a reinforcement calling Majoris, you will be able to just stop the reinforcement call in one shot, and if you headshot them, you will instantly kill them. Now, on absolute difficulty and hard stratagems, being able to stop a reinforcement calling enemy by a single insta-kill headshot will prevent them from going in rage, because anytime you are stopping a reinforcement call on those higher difficulties, the enemy will immediately go in rage, and that'll give them a full HP heal. So even if you do stop the reinforcement call, you're wasting a ton of ammo. So this one actually conserves its lower ammunition count because of that, by one-shotting them on the initial headshot and then just like eliminating the ranged enemy on top of that reinforcement call. And also the gun strike damage here is still the highest in the game as of 13.1 as far as I'm aware, so really good for gun strike builds as well. The next weapon here is the heroic plasma pistol. Now, the heroic plasma pistol is a top tier option in Space Marine 2. This has the heroic perk effect, overcharged plasma coils. You will only get charge shots on this gun, and your charge shots will do increased damage. And when it says increased damage, it means you will straight up one-shot Majoris in the game, you will damn near one-shot some of the Extremis in the game, even without Auspex. This thing can put out a ridiculous amount of damage, and the major downside here is that you will overheat on the first shot, and the charge-up time is like 5 business days. But that being said, as a secondary weapon for classes that have a primary range weapon, like the Tech Marine, like Tactical especially, that this is best on, this is a pretty much just like a pocket heavy plasma. Like, it's basically a heavy plasma as your secondary weapon, but it's actually better than that because the damage here is better than the heavy plasma is, and it's a secondary weapon in Space Marine 2, which is pretty funny. I think the Heroic Plasma Pistol is a very strong weapon. It might be like a little bit below the standard one in utility, but overall, for damage, this one is king, and you can build it to like fire 2 shots instead, and damn near like one-shot bosses, if not straight up one-shot them on Auspex. So really, really powerful option. Just be a bit careful with this one because on the Assault class and the Bulwark class, this one is not that strong for like CHP recovery at all, because if you like fail to charge up your shot a single time and get an execute, you do not have a range option to recover your HP, which is very difficult for those classes, but on those other classes like Tech Marine Tactical, it is a great option. Final one here, though, is the Honorific Relic Tier Bolt Pistol. This weapon is probably in the B tier over here with the Bolt Carbine, if not below. I actually put it below. I think the only time I ever take this one these days is if I want to use the Pattern of Excellence perk on the Sniper class, because the 3-round burst mechanic of this Heroic Bolt Pistol will trigger that perk on every single individual shot, so all you have to do is just fire your Bolt Pistol into an enemy's head and you'll get back your bomb, and because of that, it's pretty good for that build, but every other build, I would just take a normal Bolt Pistol on because their gun strike damage can be better on the firepower, the ammo economy feels better, you feel like you waste shots all the time on this thing on the Minoris. This one definitely got power crept a bit, and for that reason, I do think it's down here in the C tier. I think the normal Bolt Carbine is like actually better than this one is right now, but that is pretty much all there is for the secondary tier list for patch 13. You know, we have a lot of secondaries coming in the game. I'm very curious to see what the Heroic Bolt Carbine will look like, especially after this one gets buffed, which will almost certainly happen, or the Heroic Inferno Pistol, because hopefully we get like a Perdition Pistol for a Dante build at some point in the future. Maybe the Neo Volkite will like apply burn, but we'll see what they do with that in the future. Let me know what you think is the best secondary weapon in Space Marine 2 and how you'd rank this list. And as always, guys, thank you for watching. If you like content like this, subscribe for more. If you want to watch me live to ask me questions about the game or just come hang out, you can find me here on YouTube or on Twitch with a link in the video description. Also, the link to my community Discord. And as always, thanks for watching. Take it easy. Bye.